Today we're going to make inverse puff pastry, which is the same thing as regular puff pastry, except you combine the ingredients differently. So instead of putting the dough on the outside, you put the dough on the inside and then you wrap the butter around the dough before you roll it out and fold to create all of those beautiful layers. Some say, and I agree, that inverse puff pastry actually produces a better product and also is a bit easier to work with, especially once you get past that first fold. The first step in inverse puff pastry is to create the outside, which is going to be the butter packet. So we need to fold our parchment, is going to be 10 inches square. We're good. My favorite way to temper butter, especially if I have a lot of butter to do, is to beat it. I like to keep them all together like this. I take my rolling pin, and then I'm just gonna beat it. We've got our tempered butter in our mixer, and then I'm gonna put the flour. We're gonna mix this together. It's to give some sort of structure to the butter so that when you are rolling it out and creating your layers, since it is on the outside, you don't want it just to like melt immediately. And so the butter will help it do that. So we've got our butter flour mixture. We're gonna put that into our packet. I do like to just go ahead and help myself out a little bit by starting to spread my butter here. So we are going to close up our butter packet, flip her over, seam side down, just for your own ease. And then I like to go from the center out into the corners. So it is filled in-ish, but it's like lumpy bumpy. It's not even. So what I'm gonna need to do is then move my butter to the spots where it's needed and get a nice flat packet of dough. So we're gonna take our butter and we're gonna put it on a half sheet. We wanna keep it flat. So we're gonna chill this for 30 minutes and then we're gonna make the dough packet. So we are ready to make the dough packet for the inverse puff pastry, which just means that the part that goes inside. We are going to cut in butter into our dry ingredients. So I use half AP, half cake flour, a bit of sugar for caramelization and also flavor in the dough, and salt for flavor, and it also delays a little bit of that gluten development. And then I have some butter. The French term for when you put a little packet of butter into dough is called beurre en pommade. So I've got a nice temped bit of butter. It's very pliable, it's squishy. In with my dry ingredients. And we're gonna mix this on low until it's fully incorporated. So now the butter has completely mixed in to the flour mixture and we're ready to add our wet ingredients. So I've got very cold water and distilled white vinegar. So I'm gonna put those together so we can add them together. The purpose of the distilled vinegar is to inhibit the gluten formation as well, but also add moisture. It does add a little bit of a flavor, which is nice in the final dough as well. So I'm gonna slowly pour this in when my mixer is on low. We're gonna use all of it. So we want to mix this just until there's just a little bit of flour left in the bottom. So we're gonna take this out. We're just gonna finish this by hand. So you see I've been keeping my ice water in the fridge. The gluten. Nice, okay. So remember this is going inside, so we want it to be about 6.5 inches. Okay, that's it. So I'm gonna wrap this in plastic wrap and we're gonna chill it for 30 minutes. So we're ready to put our dough packet inside of our butter and start our folds. But before we do that, we want to make sure that the butter is the same temperature as the dough. The dough is pliable, and you can see that the butter is a little bit like, you know, hard. So it needs to be that perfect balance of pliable but still cold. So our butter packet is now a little bit more pliable. Go ahead and flour your surface. You want a little bit more flour than you would normally use just because that's just butter with a little bit of flour. So I do use a little extra bench flour. Plop her down and then peel off your parchment. Okay, so we've got, you see how that's kind of more flexible now, and we're going to work very quickly, especially with the butter on the outside. So you're gonna fold your butter around your dough, and you can just seal it up like you would a regular dough. Just work really fast and closing it up like a little envelope, and then you're gonna manipulate the butter to cover all of the seams without melting. So we've got our nice dough packet, and we are ready to do our first series of single folds. Flour the top of your dough, and then you're gonna roll it out. You wanna be firm, but also gentle, and you wanna be conscientious of the fact that there is a dough packet on the inside that does not move quite as easily as the butter. So if you feel like the dough has stopped moving with you, then just be a little bit more gentle. We want to get this to about 18 inches by 7 inches, and then I'm going to do my first fold. So I've got my first part of my envelope. I don't like to seal it until I make sure that my envelope is going to close. Yep, there we go. So now we can seal it down. You can see how beautiful this dough looks. It looks so smooth and so gorgeous, and that is the inverse puff pastry. I'm going to see if I can get it to do one more set. But if not, I'm gonna need to chill it. Otherwise, it will ruin all of our lamination before we've even begun, and that is super sad. So I am pretty much at my 18 right now. Okay, I've just made her nice and boxed off. Oh, yep, okay, great. So, brushing off my excess flour, not too aggressively because it is still a lot of butter on the outside. I'm gonna go ahead and pop this in the fridge for 30 minutes, and then we'll do our second set of single turns. So we are ready for our second set of single folds. So we wanna make sure, just like in the first step, that it feels cold but pliable. All right, you wanna make sure that as you roll, you are making sure all the layers are rolling with you. Then as it starts to flatten out all the layers together, you can start to roll a little bit more aggressively. But you do want to make sure that you are staying in that rectangular shape. And then we're ready to do our fourth single fold. So remember, we do them in batches of 2. Wrap her back up, 30 minutes in the refrigerator, and then we'll do this one more time. So we are ready for our final set of single turns, which just means 2 more single turns for this bad boy. So by this time you've developed a little bit of gluten in that dough that we put inside the butter packet. And so we want to make sure that we're not overstretching it or aggravating it. We want to move quickly, keep it cold, and then we'll do our second to last, so our 5th envelope fold here. Boop, boop. Got our nice packet of dough. Go ahead and press those layers together, and then I'm going to see if it will roll out any bit at this point, but I think she's a little peeved, to be honest. So I think we'll have to chill her in the middle of this last turn. So we're just gonna let her have a little, like, let's do 7 minutes, like a 7-minute siesta. And then we'll take her out and finish this last turn. So our dough has had a moment to rest, and we're just going to finish rolling her out. We don't want it to chill so much so that it's re-solidified or anything like that. We really just want the gluten to relax. Okay, all right. So, fold number 6, fold it into the center, fold 1/3, fold the other third, make sure that it makes a nice little, make sure it covers before you push her down. So we've done all 6 of our individual turns in batches of 2, and we are now going to rest this for at least 2 hours. It's better to do it overnight, so that's what I'm going to do. So it's been 12 hours. So some people hit their puff pastry. I'm not in love with that method. I like to take my rolling pin in both hands and push firmly all the way up. I do like to, when I'm temping it, I do like to flip it. Later we will not flip. So I might at this point try and give a little test to see how she reacts to me rolling her. all the layers appear to be rolling at the same time, so I'm going to continue to roll. I am not rolling as hard as I possibly can at this point, because otherwise you're just going to move the top layers and you're not going to move everything. This does take patience. If you rush it, then you've literally spent hours for nothing, so it's not worth it. Okay, so my dough is shrinking. It's pissed. It's cool. It needs to relax. It's still very cold, so it doesn't really need to chill too long. I just need the gluten to relax a minute so that it'll let me roll it thinner. So our dough has had a moment to chill, and I'm going to separate it in half, and that way it'll be easier to work with, but also easier to chill and swap back and forth. So to split it, I'm just gonna use a pizza cutter. So just keep working the dough, keep rolling it. So I'm gonna chill it. I'm gonna pull out the other half, roll the other half, and then swap back and forth until it's ready. Now it's just a little over. We're gonna work half at a time like we've been doing. So you just wanna identify any thicker areas and roll into those areas. I kind of let this free twirl, if you will, and then I use this hand to provide a guided and more direct pressure in one specific area, which is how I get it to be so perfectly rectangular. This is also completely ready to use. Before you do cut it, you want to make sure you chill it again. You want to make sure it's super cold and ready for its final destination, whatever that